Welcome to the Deconstructionist Deep Dive.
The podcast that doesn't just accept the story.
We break it
We examine the pieces.
and expose the machinery inside.
Let's dive in.
What if everything about celebrity-driven optimization and alternative wellness isn't just misguided, but deliberately designed to keep you chasing illusions while profiting from your hope?
That's the terrifying question we're really wrestling with today. And to answer it, you have to look at the mothership.
The source.
The source, the glossy, pastel-colored, high production flagship of the whole modern wellness movement. We are talking about Netflix's The Goop Lab, hosted by Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, this series dropped back in 2020, and looking back on it now, it really feels like it marked a kind of cultural shift, didn't it? It wasn't just another reality show.
No, not at all. It was a manifesto, a line in the sand.
But we aren't here to review it like, TV critics. I really don't care about the lighting or the editing choices, not in that sense.
No, absolutely not. We are conducting a critical audit.
Exactly. We're treating this show as a case study, a blueprint, really, for how information gets packaged and then manipulated and then ultimately sold to really smart people.
Yes, to smart people. That's the key. Because when you actually look at the source material we've gathered, this huge audit of wellness claims versus the actual scientific reality, you see a very specific and honestly a very clever pattern emerge.
It isn't just lies. That's what's so tricky about it. If it were just a bunch of obvious lies, it would be easy to spot, easy to dismiss.
Right. It's a cocktail, a carefully measured mix of, on one hand, emerging legitimate high-stakes science, and on the other, absolute unadulterated nonsense.
And that mix is what makes it so potent.
Yes.
So dangerous.
It's the whole strategy. If it were all nonsense, you'd just tune out after 5 minutes. If it were all dry science, well, you'd probably get bored. The Goop Lab sits right in that uncanny valley between the two.
So let's start with the architecture of it all. The target, as we've called it. We really need to understand what this show is actually selling. Because, on the surface, if you just watch the trailers, it looks like it's selling health. But I don't think that's right. Not even close.
It's definitely not health. Let's be really precise with our language here. Health, as a concept, is generally about maintenance, right? Or repair.
Sure. It's about fixing something that's broken.
Exactly. It's about fixing sickness. It's about returning to a baseline where you aren't in pain, you aren't dying, your body is just functioning. This show is selling something entirely different. It is selling the optimization paradigm.
Optimization. God, that's the buzzword that just will not die.
It's a brilliant marketing term.
Yeah.
Just brilliant. Because what it does is it creates an infinite market.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the underlying philosophy of optimization is that normal isn't enough. Being healthy isn't the goal anymore. The goal is to be more than healthy.
So if you're just fine, you're actually failing.
You are operating at suboptimal levels. That's the language they use. And to reach your quote-unquote peak potential, you need to bypass all the conventional methods, your doctor, your therapist, and reconnect your body, mind, and spirit through these fringe, often very exotic, very expensive practices.
It's a psychological trick, isn't it? It turns normalcy, just the state of being okay, into a deficit.
Precisely.
You wake up in the morning, you feel fine, you have your coffee, you go to work, you come home. But then you watch an episode where someone is, purging their ancestral trauma in a snowbank or having a conversation with a dead relative. And suddenly you realize, wait a minute, I haven't optimized my biofield today. I'm just leaving all this potential on the table.
It manufactures a lack where there wasn't one before. It creates a problem that you didn't know you had. And the core deception, what our sources call the architectural flaw, is how they build the argument for the solution.
The conflation.
The conflation. The show masterfully conflates genuine evidence-based exploration with complete pseudoscience. It puts them in the exact same wrapper, gives them the same weight.
And we have to talk about that wrapper for a second, because visually, this show is incredibly seductive. It's not a lecture hall. It doesn't look like a hospital waiting room.
No, it looks like a high-end spa. It's all soft focus and calming music and these beautiful aspirational locations. But the real trick, the real genius of the manipulation is the casting.
Right. They don't use random subjects.
Never. They prioritize emotional testimonials over any kind of hard data. And they do that by using the Goop staff as the guinea pigs.
That, to me, was the most insidious part of the entire narrative structure. It feels so intimate.
It's meant to.
You see these young, stylish, relatable people, people who look like the cool friends you wish you had, and they sit there and say, I'm open to anything. And then you watch them cry or scream or have this huge emotional breakthrough.
And that bypasses your critical thinking filters. That is the entire point.
How does it do that?
Well, when you're watching a peer, someone you identify with, having a profound emotional experience, your brain immediately shifts into empathy mode. You stop analyzing the claim. You start feeling their feelings.
It's the mirror neurons, right?
Yeah.
If I see someone crying with relief after an energy healing session, my brain mirrors that relief. It says something real must have happened there for her to feel that way.
Exactly. But the show deliberately avoids the hard question, which is, did it happen because of the energy? Or did it happen because this person was in a highly suggestible environment, surrounded by cameras, and was primed to have a cathartic emotional release?
They conflate the experience of the cure with the efficacy of the cure.
And those are two very, very different things. So let's peel back these layers. We have to go through the episodes because the structure of the series itself is a masterclass in manipulation. It's not random. It starts at the bait.
The bait.
This is absolutely essential. If they started with the really crazy stuff, if they opened the whole series with psychics or energy healers, they'd lose the skeptics immediately.
I'd be gone in 2 minutes.
We all would. So they need to hook you with something that feels edgy and a little bit taboo, but also real. So they start with episode 1, The Healing Trip.
Psychedelics. This is the episode on psilocybin-assisted therapy. And here's the thing. And you're the hard skeptic here. You usually tear this stuff apart. But this stuff is actually real.
It is real, and that's exactly why it's the perfect bait. I mean, looking at the data, this is by far the strongest evidence in the entire series. We're talking about controlled studies from Johns Hopkins, from Imperial College London, spanning from 2020 to today. This is not fringe anymore.
Okay, so walk us through the numbers. What are we actually seeing in the clinical data? What makes it so compelling?
The results are, well, it's substantial. We're seeing massive reductions in depression and anxiety, particularly in treatment-resistant patients.
And I want to stop on that term for a second. Treatment-resistant. We should be really clear what that means.
We should. These are not people who are just having a bad week. These are people who have tried everything. They've tried multiple SSRIs, different kinds of therapy, lifestyle changes, everything conventional medicine has to offer.
And nothing worked. They were at the end of the rope.
Exactly. And with psilocybin-assisted therapy, the data shows effects that are comparable to, and sometimes even better than, SSRIs for major depression and PTSD. But the key difference is they happen rapidly.
And they last. That's the part that blew my mind when I was reading through the source material. The durability.
The durability is incredible. The studies show sustained positive effects in 58% of patients at the 12-month mark.
A full year later.
A year later, from just 1 or 2 guided sessions. In the world of psychiatry, that is. That's a paradigm shift. That is a genuine medical breakthrough.
Okay, so the show is telling the truth. They're presenting real cutting-edge science.
Yes and no. This is where we have to get our scalpel out. The science is real, but the presentation is what's so dangerous.
So,
In the clinical trials at Johns Hopkins, you are in a sterile, controlled medical environment. You have 2 highly trained therapists in the room with you for the entire 6-hour session. You have hours of pre-session prep, and crucially, you have post-session integration therapy.
meaning you talk about what happened, what you saw.
Meaning you process the trauma that came up, you make sense of the experience. In the show, however, what do? They fly the staff to a luxury resort in Jamaica.
It looks like a vacation. They're all in designer robes, drinking mushroom tea by a pool.
It's framed as a wellness vacation, a journey of self-discovery. And while they do have guides there, it completely ignores the unsupervised dangers of the message they're sending to you, the audience.
The source material is really specific about this. Psilocybin isn't a toy. It's not just about seeing fun colors. It literally dissolves the ego. It shuts down the default mode network in your brain.
Correct. And for vulnerable people or people with a family history of psychosis or schizophrenia, that ego dissolution can be catastrophic.
It can trigger a psychotic break.
It can. It can cause intense, lasting psychological distress. By framing it as this fun, chic retreat in Jamaica, they downplay the absolute necessity of that clinical safety net. They take a powerful medical tool and they turn it into a lifestyle accessory.
It's the difference between having surgery in a hospital and getting a piercing at the mall. They make it look so casual.
Exactly, but here's the hook. Because the underlying science is real, because the mushrooms do work, the viewer buys in, their guard is down.
They trust the show now. They're thinking, okay, Goop knows what they're talking about. They're on the cutting edge of science.
Which sets them up perfectly for the next step down the ladder. Episode 2, Cold Comfort.
The Wim Hof method.
The Iceman.
I have to admit, this is compelling television.
Yeah.
I mean, watching people hyperventilate and then scream as they jump into freezing water, it's intense.
It's pure spectacle. And again, just like with the mushrooms, there is a kernel of truth here. The evidence is what the sources call moderate to mixed. It's not as rock solid as the psilocybin data, but it's not nothing.
So what does the science actually say about freezing yourself? What's happening in the body? Why would anyone do this?
Okay, so there are systematic reviews from as recently as 2024 that confirm that the method, and it's important to specify, it's the combination of the breathing protocol and the cold exposure, does reduce inflammation markers in the body.
How? Is it boosting the immune system? I hear that phrase all the time.
Boosting is such a vague, unhelpful marketing term. Let's get granular on the biology because the show just says adrenaline and moves on. When you hit that ice-cold water, and we're talking water that's just a few degrees above freezing, your brain signals the adrenal medulla.
It's a panic signal.
It's a full-on survival signal. Your body thinks it's dying, and so it dumps a massive amount of epinephrine into your system.
Adrenaline and fight or flight.
A huge surge of it. And you're not fighting a tiger, you're fighting the water. And here's the specific mechanism that the show glides over. That huge spike in epinephrine suppresses the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines, things like TNF-alpha.
Okay, translate that for us.
Basically, your body is so utterly focused on keeping your core temperature up and just surviving the shock, it has to allocate resources. So it turns down the volume on your immune system's overactive noise. That's why it can temporarily help with autoimmune inflammation. It's not magic. It's not energy. It's biological resource allocation under extreme duress.
So it does work. It has a real effect.
It has a measurable biological effect, yes. But listen to the distortion in the show. They frame Wim Hof as this mystical, guru-like figure and the method as some kind of universal alchemist tool that can cure anything.
And they totally gloss over the risks.
Completely. They don't mention them at all.
What are the risks? Aside from, being uncomfortably cold.
Well, hypothermia is the obvious one if you're not careful. But the breathing part is actually where people can get seriously hurt. They do this thing called cyclic hyperventilation.
The huffing and puffing before they get in.
Right. What that does is it forces you to blow off a huge amount of CO2 from your blood. That induces a state called hypocapnia low carbon dioxide. And that causes the blood vessels going to your brain to constrict.
So less blood to the brain.
Less oxygen to the brain. That's why you feel lightheaded and tingly. It's not energy flowing through you. It's your brain becoming slightly hypoxic. And people have passed out and drowned doing this breathing in water. It's incredibly dangerous if done improperly.
But the show is just about the spectacle, the triumph, the screaming and the ice jump.
Exactly. They prioritize the dramatic event over the actual physiology. So look at the pattern they've established. Episode 1, strong science with psychedelics. Episode 2, mixed science with the cold exposure. The viewer is now totally hooked. They feel like they're learning these cutting-edge secrets about human potential.
And that is when they pivot. That's section 3 of our audit, the move from empowerment to pure vanity. This is where the trap really snaps shut.
This is where things get very slippery. Let's talk about episode 3, The Pleasure is Ours.
All right, this is the episode that focuses on the Betty Dodson method. It's all about female sexuality, orgasms, masturbation. And honestly, watching this one, it felt very different from the rest of the series.
It's designed to. It creates a tremendous amount of goodwill with the audience, particularly the female audience.
It really does. It uses the language of wellness to disguise what is, for all intents and purposes, basic sex education. And frankly, it's sex education that is sorely, sorely needed in our culture.
The data completely backs it up. There was a major 2008 study with over 465 women that showed a 93% success rate in inducing orgasm in women who were chronically anorgasmic just by using this method.
93%. That is a massive success rate for any intervention, medical or otherwise.
It's huge. But we have to stop and ask the critical question. Why does it work? Is it some mystical wellness product? Is it a Goop secret? No.
No.
It works because it's therapeutic and behavioral. It's education. It involves simply looking at your own anatomy with a mirror, removing cultural shame, and understanding the physical mechanics of arousal.
It's evidence-based sex therapy. But by putting it inside the Goop lab, they frame it as this alternative secret. They maintain that narrative of the establishment won't tell you this, but we will.
Even though sex therapists and anatomists have known and taught this for decades, it's a very clever trick to keep you trusting their specific brand of wisdom. They are building up this deep reservoir of trust. We showed you the mushrooms, we showed you the cold, we helped you reclaim your body. Now trust us for the next step.
And then they cash in that trust. Which brings us, inevitably, to the vanity trap. Episode 6, the health span plan.
Ah, yes. The anti-aging episode. This is where the mask really slips off. If the first few episodes were framed as being about empowerment, this one is about fear. The fear of aging, the fear of death.
They look at things like vampire facials, which is PRP, microneedling, and all these extreme restrictive diets. For anyone who hasn't seen the rather alarming photos of celebrities with blood smeared all over their faces, can you just explain the vampire facial?
It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. They draw your own blood, they put it in a centrifuge to spin it down and separate the plasma from the red blood cells. That concentrates the platelets, that's the platelet-rich plasma, or PRP.
And that's the liquid gold stuff.
That's the yellowish goo, yes. Then they take that goo and they either inject it back into your face with dozens of tiny needles, or they use a microneedling device to just punch thousands of tiny holes in your skin to help it absorb.
And the idea, the theory, is that the growth factors in your own platelets will stimulate new collagen production.
That's the theory. But the actual evidence, it's low, it's anecdotal at best. The sources are clear. There is limited evidence for some minor temporary collagen stimulation, but there is absolutely zero proof of any kind of real long-term longevity extension. It is a cosmetic procedure masquerading as a life-extending health intervention.
And the source material points out this hilarious irony in this episode. It honestly felt like a glitch in the Matrix when I watched it.
It is the smoking gun of the entire series. It's unbelievable they left it in. The actual experts in the episode, the real scientists they have on camera, admit that things like sleep, exercise, and a healthy diet account for 90% of all longevity factors.
90%.
Yeah.
So the actual answer to the question, how do I live a longer, healthier life, is sleep 8 hours, move your body every day, and eat some vegetables.
Correct. Boring, but correct. But here's the problem for Goop. You can't sell sleep. You can't package go for a jog in a $3,000 weekend retreat. You can't patent a salad.
So what do they do?
So the episode spends almost all of its runtime focusing on the expensive, painful, exotic, and largely unproven intervention, the needles in the face, rather than the boring basics that actually, work.
It's a classic distraction technique. Look over here. Look at this shiny, painful, bloody thing. This must be the secret. And meanwhile, the actual secret is boring and free, so they just ignore it.
And you have to notice the progression. They've moved you methodically from real science with the mushrooms, to mixed science with the ice, to evidence-based therapy disguised as wellness with the sex ed, to now pure vanity with the facials. They have walked you step by step down the garden path.
Okay, now you're ready for the deep end.
Now you're ready for pure, unfiltered pseudoscience. This is where the wheels completely fall off. This is where we stop talking about biology, however loosely, and we start talking about, well, magic.
This is where the show just breaks with reality entirely. Section 4. Let's start with episode 5, the energy experience.
Oh, man. This features a man named John Emerald, and he does something he calls energy healing.
The more technical term is biofield manipulation, and
Yeah.
the visual of this is just, it's wild. He moves his hands through the air inches above a person's body. He's not even touching them. And the person on the table starts writhing and convulsing like they're in the middle of an exorcism.
It looks incredibly dramatic. I mean, the skeptical part of my brain just immediately wants to say they're actors.
But they're not actors. And that's what makes it so confusing for the viewer. These are real people having what appear to be real involuntary reactions. But the scientific verdict here is unambiguous. None pseudoscience.
Okay, so break this down for us. Is there any conceivable mechanism for this? Is there any principle of physics that supports the idea of an undetectable human energy field that can be manipulated by waving your hands around?
None. Zero. It fundamentally violates the established laws of physics and biology. There is no such thing as a detectable energy field emanating from your hands. It can be, scooped or pushed to cure ailments. But people will say, we can measure the body's electricity.
Sure, we can measure the electrical activity of the brain with an EEG or the tiny magnetic field of the heart with an MCG. But these fields are incredibly, incredibly weak. They drop off to almost nothing, just millimeters from the skin. The idea that you can feel it, let alone manipulate it from a foot away, it's just not physically possible.
So if the physics isn't real, why are the people on the table writhing?
That is the raw power of suggestion, placebo, and confirmation bias, all wrapped up in a bit of social theater. If you are told that this famous, charismatic healer is going to move powerful energy through you, and you are lying on a table with a bunch of Netflix cameras pointed at you, and you desperately want to believe, your body will react.
It's a performance. A subconscious one, maybe, but a performance nonetheless.
It's a socially compliant performance. We have seen this exact phenomenon in faith-healing revivals for over a century. The preacher waves his coat, and the person on stage falls over. Why? Not because the coat has magic powers, it's because the social pressure, the group energy, and the internal expectation create a very real physical response.
The source material mentions the McGill Office for Science and Society. They've tested these kinds of claims repeatedly, and they fail every time in controlled settings.
Right, because how do you test this properly? You blindfold the patient, or you put up a screen so they can't see the healer, and guess what happens the moment you do that? The effects completely disappear. If you don't know the healer is there waving their hands, you don't writhe. That proves, beyond any reasonable doubt, that the effect is purely psychological. But the show presents it as a physical reality. They are aggressively, actively dismantling the idea of objective reality itself. They're telling you your feelings define physics.
And if you think that's bad, we have to talk about episode 4. Are you intuitive? The psychic medium episode.
The verdict, none weak. This is, without a doubt, the oldest con in the book.
They bring in these mediums who claim to talk to the dead, and you watch the Goop staff just get blown away. They're crying. They're saying, how did he possibly know that about my grandfather?
It's a technique called cold reading, and we really need to explain exactly how this works, because it can feel like magic if you don't see the trick. But it's just a simple mentalist's trick.
So explain it. How do they know about the dead relative's chest pain?
Think of cold reading like a shotgun blast, not a sniper rifle. You don't aim for a specific bullseye, you just fire a spray of pellets in the general direction of the target, knowing something will hit. You start with a high probability guess. You say, I'm sensing a father figure here. There's something about his chest. Maybe a pain in the chest, or heart issues, or trouble breathing.
You just listed 3 of the most common causes of death for older men. Heart disease is the #1 killer.
Exactly. It's a very, very safe bet. Then, the medium carefully reads your body language. If you lean in or your eyes widen, they know they've got a hit, and they'll keep digging on that line. If you frown or look confused, they'll pivot instantly. No, wait, the spirit is telling me it wasn't the heart itself, it was the chest area. Was there anxiety, a heaviness in the chest?
They just keep fishing until they get a little nibble of confirmation.
And the client, I really should say the victim, does all the work for them. The client's brain, wanting to believe, forgets the dozen misses and latches onto the one lucky hit. Psychologists call it the hit rate bias, or the Forer effect.
And the source material is very clear that any anomalous information found in properly blinded, controlled studies of mediums is generally explained by this, or by simple psychopathology.
And yet, the show presents this as a genuine, attainable gift. The very title, Are You Intuitive?, implies that we all have this power, we just need to unlock it, probably with a Goop-approved course. It validates magical thinking.
And again, it just violates the known laws of physics. There is no verifiable mechanism for a consciousness to survive death and then communicate complex information through a suburban medium for a fee.
The historical context here is so important. This isn't new. This is just 19th century spiritualism with the table rapping and the floating trumpets, repackaged for the Instagram generation.
Right. Compare this to hydropathy in the 1800s or radionics in the 1920s. Every single generation has its own version of the establishment is lying to you, but here is the secret magic cure. It always promises miracles, but in reality, it just distracts people from real medical care, or in the worst cases, causes direct harm.
Which brings us to the final diagnosis. Section 5. Why is this so dangerous? Because I know some listeners might be thinking, look, just chill out. It's entertainment. If people want to believe in energy healing, who cares? Let them.
But it's not that simple, is it? The single most dangerous weapon this show wields is the concept of false equivalence.
This is the critical takeaway of the whole deep dive. By placing psychedelic therapy, which is strong, cutting-edge, verifiable science, right next to psychic mediums, which is zero science, they completely flatten the intellectual landscape. They elevate the nonsense to the level of legitimate medicine.
It creates a halo effect.
A powerful one. You watch the mushroom episode, you see the Johns Hopkins data, you read the studies and you think, wow, this show is legit, they do their homework. Then the very next episode is about energy healing. Your brain unconsciously transfers that built-up legitimacy.
If the mushrooms work, maybe the vampire facial works too. Maybe the psychic is real.
Exactly. It systematically erodes your ability to distinguish between a clinical trial and a magic trick. It turns everything into content of equal value.
And we have to ask, who are they targeting with this content? This show is not aimed at happy, fulfilled people who have their lives together.
No, this is what we have to call vulnerability exploitation. Look at the personal stories they choose to highlight. They don't pick happy people who just want to, jump a little higher. They pick staff members who are dealing with profound trauma, with grief over a dead parent, with sexual dysfunction, with deep-seated body insecurities.
They sell hope disguised as optimization.
And we can't ignore the commercial ties. Let's be real. This whole series is a 6-hour infomercial for the Goop brand. The alignment with their products is subtle, but it's omnipresent. They are creating a problem, you are unoptimized, and then conveniently selling you the solution in their online store.
This wasn't just us being critical either. The head of the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, actually came out publicly in 2020 and slammed this show.
He did. He called it fake news, and he directly compared its potential for harm to the anti-vax movement.
That is a very heavy accusation to level at a lifestyle show on Netflix.
It's completely warranted. The ultimate risk is that it encourages viewers to reject conventional, evidence-based medicine. The show constantly portrays doctors and scientists as insufficient, as closed-minded people who just don't get it. If you have cancer or severe depression and you choose to see a psychic or an energy healer instead of an oncologist or a psychiatrist because Netflix told you it was optimization, that is a potentially life-threatening decision.
So we've torn it down. We've looked at the architecture of the illusion. How do we get out? Section 6, the way out. What do we do with this information?
We have to reclaim critical thinking from the algorithm. That's what it comes down to.
And we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? We've already acknowledged that the psychedelics and, to some extent, the breeding methods have real merit.
Correct. The way out isn't to become a hardened cynic who just rejects everything new. Cynicism is lazy. Skepticism is hard work. You have to be willing to use a filter.
Okay, so what's the filter? What are the questions we should be asking when we see a new wellness trend?
It's a simple 3-question filter. Evidence. Mechanism. Plausibility. Ask yourself, 1, is there a plausible biological mechanism? Does this align with our understanding of physics, chemistry, and biology? Mushrooms. Yes, they bind to serotonin receptors. Psychics? No.
Okay, question 2.
2, is the evidence for this anecdotal, or is it statistical? Is it based on one person's emotional story, or is it based on randomized, controlled trials with hundreds of people? Sex therapy, statistical, vampire facial, anecdotal.
And the last one.
And 3, is it falsifiable? In other words, is there a way to test this where it could actually be proven wrong? If a claim can't be proven wrong, it's not science, it's faith.
So, psychedelics, FDA breakthrough status, supervised usage, that passes the filter. Wim Hof, bounded breathing protocols, clear biological explanation for the inflammation reduction, that passes the filter with caveats about the risks.
Vampire facials and talking to ghosts fails the filter on all 3 counts.
And finally, we have to revisit the basics.
We do. Real longevity, real optimization is profoundly boring. It's getting enough sleep. It's moving your body. It's eating whole foods. It's fostering meaningful relationships. It's not sexy. It doesn't cost $500 an hour. And you can't make a hit Netflix show about someone consistently getting 8 hours of sleep a night.
But that's the truth.
That's the boring, unmarketable truth. True optimization is simply knowing the difference between a clinical trial and a TV anecdote. It's understanding that just because something feels profound and emotional, that doesn't make it medically true.
It's about being the architect of your own understanding of your own health, rather than letting a celebrity lifestyle brand architect it for you.
Precisely. You have to build your own framework for truth.
So I just want to circle back one more time to that vulnerability exploitation idea, because that's the part that makes this feel less like a silly show and more like something predatory.
It is predatory. Because hope is a powerful commodity. When people are in pain, whether it's physical pain or the emotional pain of grief, they're desperate for a solution. And this show, and the industry it represents, positions itself as the purveyor of that hope.
But it's a false hope.
It's a hope that is conditional on you buying into their system, their products, their worldview. The hope offered by science, by medicine, is different. It's often slower, it's less dramatic, it comes with statistics and side effects and uncertainty, but it's real.
It's the difference between a lottery ticket and a retirement plan.
That is a perfect analogy. The Goop lab is selling you a lottery ticket for your health. Maybe this one magical thing will fix everything. Real health is a 401k. It's boring, daily, consistent investment in the basics.
So if you're listening to this, and maybe you found yourself nodding along to some of these episodes, the point isn't to feel bad about it.
No, not at all. It's designed to make you nod. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that has perfected the art of bypassing our defenses, but now you have the blueprints, you've seen the machinery.
We've taken the back off the watch and shown you all the gears. Now you know how it works.
And you can't unsee it.
You can't.
And that's our deep dive for this week.
Remember, the most dangerous illusion is the one you don't know you're in.
But now you know. So here's our question for you. We've torn down the Goop Lab's temple of wellness brick by brick. Now, the real question is, what's the one wellness belief you've been holding on to that you're finally ready to put on the chopping block?
Let us know in the comments. Question the narrative. Deconstruct the dogma. See the system.
We'll see you next time. Stay skeptical. Thank you for joining us.